Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. So, is Israel's siege of Gaza finally over? Or at least is this the beginning of a rapid end? Well, it's been announced that Hamas and Israel have agreed the first phase of a peace deal, which would see all living Israeli hostages released this weekend by Monday, according to Donald Trump. In return, Israel will withdraw to agreed lines, aid will be allowed in, and some Palestinian hostages will also be released. So is this the end of the massacre? What happens next? Will it lead to a lasting peace? But first, for daily news and politics, please click the subscribe button to stay notified. So the White House presented its 21-point peace plan recently, and the first phase has been agreed now. There is reason to be sceptical about what looks like a massive breakthrough today, because although that full peace plan allows for a fully independent Palestinian state, doesn't strictly mandate it. Israel and the US are still officially opposed to the idea. However, there has been movement on this, as both have had to officially accept the possibility. But let's begin with what is in this first phase, because although Hamas are going to release all 20 living Israeli hostages, they will retain the bodies of deceased hostages for now. Part of the reason for this is there are still matters to be agreed. Part of the peace plan is that Hamas cannot have any role in running Palestine now or in the future. They would also have to disarm. Hamas are no more willing to do either than if you made the same insistence of Likud and their 4 coalition government partners. In fact, the full peace plan calls for a technocratic administration managing Palestinian territory, which would be overseen by Tony Blair but not include the Palestinian Authority. Naturally, the group of people who claim to support Palestine but in reality couldn't care less are incensed by Blair's involvement, but I don't care about those fakes. That being said, there are genuine concerns as well. First of all, having an imposed administration would be a lot more palatable if the full roadmap made it explicitly clear that the final stage was a fully autonomous, sovereign Palestinian state. Because after all, you cannot set up the Palestinian state overnight. Now, the peace plan doesn't rule this outcome out, or it would be a complete non-starter, but it is only one of possible outcomes. This is a problem because while this imposed technocratic administration is in place, there is no democratic government in Palestine or even representative government. Now, not all countries have democracies, of course, and not all Arab countries do. In fact, very few do. But let's say the Palestinians want democratically elected government. If this administration is in place indefinitely, it would actually represent the United States, because they are the ultimate arbiters here, these so-called champions of democracy, denying democracy to an entire people who want it. Another problem is that it isn't even an imposed administration of Palestinians who are considered to be suitable. In this way, it would not be representative of the Palestinian people at all. People don't like being ruled by outsiders. It didn't go down well in Northern Ireland. It's not going to go down well in Palestine. In fact, if you really wanted to end the cycle of hate and violence, should we just look at the situation? So Israel have murdered tens of thousands of Palestinians. This is not to downplay the act of genocide committed by Hamas, who would have killed tens of thousands, even millions of Israelis if they could. But from the Palestinians' point of view, they've had tens of thousands of innocent civilians, not Hamas terrorists, murdered, including many children, and many more denied basics like food and medicine, right? So it's fair to say Palestinians have probably got a bit of a grudge. Their main city has been bombed to hell, more on that in a bit. Israel's standing on the international stage has plummeted, and several of its government are wanted for crimes against humanity and war crimes, at least possibly genocide charges in time. The vast majority of countries in the world would execute those warrants if those charged entered their countries. In fact, it was probably Hamas's plan all along to commit these atrocities in order to provoke Israel into the very bloodshed we've seen unfold. It could serve no other strategic purpose. Why else did they do it? Hamas basically got what they wanted. When Netanyahu said that Starmer was rewarding terrorists by recognising Palestine, no, Netanyahu is rewarding terrorism by boosting support for Hamas amongst many moderate people in several powerful countries. Netanyahu is rumoured to have received Recruiting Officer of the Year for Hamas 2 years running, and he's going for the hat trick. So anti-Israeli sentiment is probably now baked into populations around not just the Middle East, but around the world. Israel's future is way less secure than it was 2 years ago. But there's more. Palestine is now to have an effective dictatorship imposed on them, made up of foreigners. And to add insult to injury, although this administration will include Arabs, not Palestinians, it will be led by a Brit. It will be like the old colonial masters are back, won't it? Even if Blair has the very best intentions, the optics are just terrible. And there are some who don't trust him to have the very best intentions, but to be Israel's bitch, right? There's a sense in which you look at the basic deal and you say, okay, we won't get a Palestinian state overnight. That's impossible. So it makes sense. You cannot have Israel administer Palestine, or even just Gaza, while this process takes place. So that means, okay, you're probably going to have an interim administration, right? But having a non-Israeli administration managing Palestine is an acceptable transition. But not if you think this administration will just be a proxy for Israeli rule and will be in place indefinitely. And don't forget the difficulty of reconstruction. So let's come back to Gaza. There can't be real peace until everyone in Palestine is housed and able to go about normal life again. Just having access to aid isn't enough. They're still living in tents, right? And even once you've rebuilt, even then, there will be severe physical and mental health care needs remaining for decades. Many Palestinians are young, and they've now been given permanent mental and physical damage. There's going to have to be a big push for managing the peace for decades in order to allow those who've lived through this. You cannot just leave them and say, right, can you get on with each other now? So those who've lived through this in both Palestine and Israel, you need those to basically die off and allow younger generations to lead their respective countries free from the personal experience of the horrors of this time. And before that healing process can even begin, Israel must fully withdraw and Gaza must be rebuilt. I don't see many people talking about the specifics of that rebuilding process, but it will take many years, decades potentially. Where does the money come from? From people who will have dollar signs in their eyes, that's who. There's not going to be altruistic governments funding this, I'll tell you that for nothing. So this is the full peace proposal in brief, as far as I can tell. That Palestine is ruled over by a foreign-appointed administration which contains only foreigners, right? Led by a white European. This might lead to a fully independent Palestinian government at some unspecified point in the future, but there's no guarantee. In the meantime, Hamas are expected to completely disarm and exile themselves, or at least not attempt any role in the governance of Palestine, even at a very local level. And they're supposed to do this when they believe the people appointed to rule over Palestine are more on Israel's side than the Palestinians. I'm going to be honest, I'm very pleased the fighting has stopped and that aid is going to be released. But this is just a ceasefire, isn't it? It doesn't sound like a peace plan to me. It will make no difference that when this ceasefire breaks again, Israel and the US will loudly blame the Palestinians or Hamas. There cannot be serious peace if you do not give Palestinians a cast iron guarantee that they will rule their own country, because you're basically offering them slavery with healthcare benefits, maybe. I think the international community can just about get away with saying that a future Palestinian government cannot have Hamas in it. But I don't think we can say that you basically have to go back to living in what David Cameron once described as an open-air prison indefinitely. If the tens of thousands of lives lost these last couple of years are not going to be completely in vain, there needs to be better than this. There has to be a roadmap which leads to a clear sovereign future for Palestine that gives Palestinians ownership over their own futures. The vast majority of countries have already symbolically backed this outcome. It just needs to turn into a formal plan. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And for more content, you could subscribe to the channel or even join for access to streams and behind the scenes updates. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.